Fellas, we've just had UFC 305, and this might have been one of the hardest cards to call in a while because there were so many unexpected outcomes to come from this card. So we're going to be going through every single fight that competed on the main card, the fighters that won, the fighters that lost, and we're going to be matchmaking them into fights that I think make the most sense, fights that I think would be fun to see as a fan, and just fights that I think we need to see next considering all these fighters on the card. So we'll start off with the first fight on the main card, which was Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. Now, Carlos Prates, and let's just talk about the fighting nerds overall. They just keep producing killer after killer, because Carlos Prates is another one, 4-0 in the UFC with 4 finishes, such a good kickboxer, and just went out there and demolished Li Jingliang. So for the Leech, listen, he's in a bit of a weird position. He took ages off after his fight with Daniel Rodriguez, comes back, gets finished, and he's nearly 40 years old. He's quite getting up there in age, and I just don't really know what's next for him. So I don't want to be giving him any up-and-coming killer anymore. I don't want to be giving him anyone at the highest level. I think him versus Phil Rowe could be a decent fight. Phil Rowe has already shown he's not good enough for the highest level. Showed that in his last fight against Jake Matthews and when he fought Neil Magny. But he's not terrible. He's not bottom of the barrel. I think he's got good striking, and he's got like a good technical style of striking, just Phil Rowe, and he only kind of really struggles when it comes to guys who want to engage the grappling, which I don't think Li Jingliang's going to do. I think it could be a fun fight on the feet. You've got Li Jingliang, great chin, very powerful against more of a technical guy in Phil Rowe. I think this could be a good fight on the feet between two mid-welterweights. So Li Jingliang, Phil Rowe, sticking on a fight night somewhere, and I just think it's a winnable fight for both of them, especially Li Jingliang if he wants to get back in the winning column. But for Carlos Prates, this dude is on an absolute roll recently. Like I said, 4-0 in the UFC, and even you look outside the UFC, this dude was just a striking monster. His kickboxing is so good. He's got such a technical style of kickboxing, and he's so patient, but he's also so dangerous. I want to see him versus Nicolas Dalby. I feel like Nicolas Dalby is that perfect guy that we can kind of test these up-and-coming guys on. We did it with Renat Fakhretdinov. Even though it was a very, very close fight, he passed the test. But Nicolas Dalby is a very dangerous guy, and I feel like he can be the guy that gets Carlos Prates these welterweight fights, like these ranked welterweight fights, because he's 4-0 in the UFC. He's on an absolute streak, and with a win over Li Jingliang in that fashion, I want to say he gets a ranked opponent, but the welterweight division is so stacked, I don't think we can just give him a ranked opponent like that. So I think we need to test him, put him against Nicolas Dalby. A stylistic problem as well if Nicolas Dalby mixes up with the grappling, which is inevitable. I think this could be a really, really fun fight. Fight of the night if you put this on any card. Carlos Prates, Nicolas Dalby. If he can beat Nicolas Dalby, that's when we start the conversation of giving Prates a ranked opponent. And if Nicolas Dalby can shut down the prospect of Carlos Prates, that's a big win for Nicolas Dalby. And, you know, Nicolas Dalby, even though he lost to Renat Fakhretdinov, like I said, that was a very, very close fight. And previous to that, he was on a streak. So, Carlos Prates, Nicolas Dalby, absolute banger of a fight. I think this will be super fun to see, whilst also being a test for Carlos Prates to see how good he is. And it wouldn't surprise me if he passes the test, to be honest, because like I said, the fighting nerds with guys like Gene Silver, you know, even Caio Barallo as well. There's just so many monsters coming from that gym. So Carlos Prates, Nicolas Dalby. Then we had Tai Tuivasa versus Rosenstrike. I don't know what judge gave that 30-27 to Tai Tuivasa, but they need to be sacked from the UFC. That was a terrible scorecard. It's just not fun seeing Tai Tuivasa lose again. He's on a 5-fight losing streak now, and I think he displayed in this fight that he's good enough to stay in the UFC, but he's not really good enough to make it to the highest level. So for Tai Tuivasa, what better fight to make for him than the winner of Waldo Cortez Acosta and Chris Barnett? Whether it's Cortez Acosta and Tuivasa or Chris Barnett and Tuivasa, I think this is a really fun fight to make, because if Chris Barnett wins, Barnett versus Tuivasa might be the fight that resurrects the heavyweight division. That might be a fight that every MMA fan just has to tune into. Chris Barnett versus Tai Tuivasa. You're telling me that wouldn't be a fun fight in the heavyweight division at this stage in Tuivasa's career? And if it's Waldo Cortez Acosta, there'd probably be nothing worse than seeing Cortez Acosta beat Tai Tuivasa. But if Tai Tuivasa was somehow the guy to shut down Waldo Cortez Acosta, that arrogant little shithouse, if Tuivasa can be the guy to do that, sign me up. Tai Tuivasa, winner of Waldo Cortez Acosta and Chris Barnett. And same for, if Cortez Acosta does beat Chris Barnett, he does deserve a ranked opponent. He's probably one of the best unranked heavyweights right now. And I feel like Tai Tuivasa's got to be that guy that welcomes in these new ranked guys. So, winner of Cortez Acosta and Chris Barnett, I think should face Tai Tuivasa next, because he's on a 5-fight losing streak. 4 of them coming by way of finish as well. So, yeah, let's just see him against the winner of Cortez Acosta and Chris Barnett, which, by the way, the matchmakers did a great job matching them two against each other. And then for Rosenstrike, Again, Rosenstrike's in a weird position. He's lost to every great fighter that he's fought, but he's beaten every kind of mid or on a bit of a losing streak fighter that he's fought. What I'm trying to say is he's never really beaten anyone kind of good in the heavyweight division. So let's give him a fighter that's not great, but he's just alright in the heavyweight division. Marcin Tybura, I think they were scheduled to fight at UFC 273. I think this would be a pretty decent fight. They're both very well-rounded, especially Marcin Tybura. I know we just got finished by Sergey Spivak. Marcin Tybura is not going to be able to outstrike strikers, and he's not going to be able to outgrapple grapplers, but he's just a fairly well-rounded guy, and he's just good everywhere. And I feel like it's a bit of a good test for Rosenstrike at this point in his career. Rosenstrike's kind of displayed that he's not good enough for the top end of the career. I mean, he's lost to so many heavyweights right now, but he's also been able to beat these up-and-comers. He beat Shamil Gaziev, and then he ends up beating Tuivasa, sending him on a big losing streak. So I think Rosenstrike versus Marcin Tybura is probably the next fight to make in the heavyweight division. They haven't fought each other yet. They're both in that position where they're good but not great for the heavyweight division. They're good but not at the highest level, but they're also good enough to stay in the rankings. Tybura lost to Volkov, lost to Aspinall, and now he's just lost to Spivak. He needs a fight that's a lot more winnable for him. So Rosenstrike, Marcin Tybura, maybe like a main event for a shit fight night or something like that. Tybura, Rosenstrike, let's see that one next. And I'm surprised they haven't been matched up against each other, to be honest, considering they've always been in that same area in the heavyweight division. Then for Gamrot and Dan Hooker, what a fucking fight, man. Gamrot and Dan Hooker, what a fight. This is the fight that makes them, like, these are the fights that make me stay an MMA fan, with fights like Gamrot and Dan Hooker. Such a good fight. And Gamrot impressed me on the feet as well. He looked a lot better on the feet than he did in grappling in this fight as well. Really, really good fight. But for Gamrot, he fell short in this fight. Very, very close fight. Nothing to be ashamed of, but he fell short. And I feel like his title shot that he wanted has kind of been taken away, especially with that loss to Dariush a few years ago. I think he's in that position to welcome up a new guy in the ranking. Give him Yoel Alvarez. I've been saying for a while, Yoel Alvarez needs to fight in the rankings. He needs to do it. I thought he should have done it after the win over Mark Jacasey, to be honest. And he's gone out there recently at UFC Abu Dhabi, had that really good win over Elvis Brenner, which is a really good win. And he's only lost to Arman Sarukian in the UFC, who's literally one of the best in the division right now, is going to be fighting for a belt against Makhachev. He's finished every single fighter that he's fought in the UFC. He's just dangerous everywhere. He's dangerous on the feet. He's an amazing submission artist as well. And I feel like it's the perfect test for Gamrot, because like I said, Gamrot, he did look good on the feet in this fight. He was landing some good shots on Dan Hooker, and he seemed to have improved his striking a lot, and I think this could be an absolute banger. They're both two high-level grapplers, both two high-level strikers. There is no way this is a boring fight, and I know Gamrot's kind of got a reputation for not being the most interesting, but after that performance against Dan Hooker, we need to give Gamrot some other guys that are going to give him a fun fight. Alvarez, Gamrot. If Alvarez wins, send him into the rankings. If Gamrot wins, let him fight some top 10 guys. Gamrot, Yoel Alvarez, I think that's such a fun fight to make. And then for Dan Hooker, is this dude on a second win in his career? A few years ago, I was thinking, like, you know, Dan Hooker, especially after the Arnold Allen loss, I was like, okay, he might make it to the rankings of the lightweight division, but the spot has just moved past him. But he's on a 3-fight winning streak now. He's looked really good. Fuck it. Dan Hooker versus Charles Oliveira. I never thought I'd be saying this. I never thought I'd be saying Dan Hooker and Charles Oliveira is the fight to make. But let's see this fight. Dan Hooker's kind of like the new Charles Oliveira of the lightweight division. You know, the blonde, the dyed white hair as well. You know, really fun fighter, in fun fights all the time, gets counted out a lot and then comes off with a win. His last two fights have been some of the best fights. That fight with Jalen Turner was a banger. That fight with Gamrot was a banger. And he's going to be in the top 5. Now, let's not give him Gaethje. Let's not give him Poirier, who he's already lost to. And obviously, let's not give him like an Islam, or because he's already lost to Islam, or an Arman Sarukian. Let's give him Charles Oliveira. Oliveira's in need of a win. He's lost to the top 2 guys in the division in Sarukian and Makhachev. He's been able to beat everyone else, but he needs to fight an up-and-comer. I thought Gamrot versus Oliveira would have been the fight to make rather than Gamrot versus Hooker. But considering Hooker's just beating Gamrot and taking his place, fuck it. Oliveira versus Hooker. If Dan Hooker can beat Charles Oliveira, I never thought I'd be saying this, but give Dan Hooker a title shot. I know that's crazy to say, especially after we looked against Makhachev a few years ago, but this would be such a fun fight to make, man. This would be an absolute banger. Fight of the night. I've said this for multiple fights on this card right now, but that was just such a fun fight for Dan Hooker. Him versus Oliveira. If he wins, he gets a title shot. If Oliveira wins, he's back in the title picture. Such a fun fight to make. You can't hate on this matchup. Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira. We need to see this fight next, in my opinion. Kai Kara-France versus Steve Erceg. This was one of the fights that kind of proved my point of this card being so hard to predict. I don't think anyone expected Kai Kara-France to go out there and KO Steve Erceg, man. I thought Steve Erceg was the future of the flyweight division, and I guess we've got to live up to the nickname No Blink for Kai Kara-France. He seems to be sharp, and for we'll start off with Steve Erceg first. Listen, I still think he's one of the top flyweights in the world after that performance against Pantoja, and he just got caught against one of the better strikers. So for Steve Erceg, let's see him versus Bruno Silva. Now, Bruno Silva had a bit of a shaky start to his UFC career. He was on a couple no contests and a couple losses as well, but now he's managed to pick it back up. 4 wins in a row, a lot of finishes on his name. He's got some good wins as well, like Tyson Naman, Cody Durden. He's now a ranked fighter. And for Steve Erceg, it's crazy saying this considering how he performed against Pantoja, but his best win is Matt Schnell. Like, at the end of the day, he looked really good in that fight against Matt Schnell, outboxed him and knocked him out. But he hasn't actually beaten a top flyweight yet. So I don't think we can just keep giving him top flyweights just because he lost to Pantoja. Let's see how he does against an up-and-coming Bruno Silva. He's on a 2-fight losing streak now. Silva's on a streak. If Bruno Silva can beat Steve Erceg, then he's going to be making a name for himself in the flyweight division. And if Steve Erceg can beat Bruno Silva, shows that Erceg's good enough for the top 10, and then we can start seeing Erceg against these other guys like maybe Emmanuel Cap, or I don't even know what's going on with Makai in the UFC. I was going to say Makai, but I don't even think I'm pretty sure his UFC aspirations are done. But Steve Erceg, Bruno Silva, good fight to test Bruno Silva, and we can also see whereabouts Steve Erceg is in the division. So Erceg, Silva, and then for Kai France, he had the performance against Amir Albazi, which most people thought he won, and now he's gone out there and KO'd Steve Erceg. I'm not going to say he deserves a title shot because previous to the Erceg fight, he was on a 2-fight losing streak, and he did lose to Moreno. So I think we should see him versus the loser of Pantoja and Asakura. Now, this hasn't been confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that Kai Asakura is going to be fighting for the belt next in the flyweight division against Pantoja. I don't know when, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be next. So I think Kai France should fight the loser, and if he beats the loser, give him a title shot. Now for Kai Asakura, he's a big star in Japan. If he can come over to the UFC, lose a title shot against Pantoja, I think him versus Kai France is a really, really fun fight to make on the feet, and it's a good fight to give Kai France a title shot. And if Pantoja loses to Kai Asakura, we've got a new big Japanese star as the champion. I don't think Pantoja deserves an immediate rematch, and what better fight to give him than a guy who's coming off a really flashy win over Steve Erceg in Kai France, a much better win over Erceg than Pantoja's as well. So for Kai France, I think he's 1 fight away from a title shot, and I think he should face the loser of Pantoja versus Kai Asakura, or to be honest, just whoever fights for the belt next. Give him the loser. If he wins, give him a shot, because I don't think he just immediately deserves a title shot for beating, rank number 8 Steve Erceg. So that's what I think should be next for Kai France. Then the main event, Dricus du Plessis versus Adesanya. Dricus du Plessis gets it done. The king of looking bad and then pulling off a finish out of nowhere is Dricus du Plessis, and he did it in this fight as well. Izzy looked really good in this fight up until he didn't, and Dricus just got the finish. So for Israel Adesanya, I know it's crazy to say considering this dude's career, but I think he needs to give title aspirations a pause for a minute. He doesn't deserve another title shot for a while, and I think it's back in that area where he needs to face an up-and-comer. It's going to be really weird seeing Adesanya not fight for a belt, but I think he should face the winner of Brendan Allen and Nasruddin Imavov. Now, in any other division, the winner of that fight would be getting a title shot, but the middleweight division is too stacked. You've got Chimaev, you've got Whittaker, you've got Sean Strickland, you've got Allen and Imavov, so I don't think we can just say the winner of this fight gets a title shot, but I think there will be definitely one win away from a title shot. So I think Allen Imavov, winner. Give him Adesanya. Adesanya, he's on a 2-fight losing streak now to Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. One of them coming by way of finish as well. He's lost 3 out of his last 4 as well in the middleweight division. Give him an up-and-comer. Give him the winner of Allen and Imavov. They're going to be fighting in, I think, the co-main event of UFC Paris, or it might be the co-main event of UFC Paris. Both of those guys are on a streak. Both of those guys are only 1 win away from a title shot if they beat each other, because they're 2 good contenders in the middleweight division. Give the winner of that a massive fight against Israel Adesanya, which will be their biggest fight in their career so far. If they can beat Adesanya, give them a title shot. If Adesanya can beat an up-and-comer against Allen Imavov and prove that he's actually, willing to fight these up-and-coming guys, then we can see Adesanya back in the title picture. So I will do Israel Adesanya versus the winner of Brendan Allen and Nasruddin Imavov. And then for the winner, Dricus du Plessis. I think it's pretty obvious who's next, and it is Sean Strickland. I really want to see this fight again, man. Mainly for the press conference, because Dricus du Plessis is low-key kind of the king of press conferences these days. He made Strickland and Adesanya cry. But no, I think Strickland should be next. I know a lot of people are going to say Robert Whittaker as well, but considering that Dricus du Plessis went out there and completely finished Robert Whittaker, and the fact that Whittaker has been beaten by Adesanya twice, whereas Strickland beat Adesanya and he had a much closer fight against Dricus, I think Strickland should be next. He beat Adesanya in dominant fashion. He beat Paulo Costa recently, and he lost in a very, very close, controversial fight against Dricus du Plessis. The build-up would be insane. I want to see Strickland get another title shot. He's coming off a win. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. Who says no? Because I definitely don't. So that is what I think should be next for Dricus du Plessis. If Dricus du Plessis can beat Strickland as well, what a resume, by the way. Like, he's beaten Whittaker, Strickland twice, and Adesanya. And if Strickland can get that belt back against Dricus du Plessis, then we got Sean Strickland as the champion again. But that is who I think every main card fighter from UFC 305 should fight next. Let me know your thoughts on these matchups and if you would have changed anything around. But thank you for watching.